Welcome to late July, early August on the flower farm where the lisianthus is blooming and coming into its prime. And today I want to talk about beating the summer slump. Now this is my 4th year of flower farming, and every summer it is the same, where demand obviously slows down. People go on vacation, people have their own flowers, and let's be honest, some of the more special, interesting flowers that people want are typically in spring and maybe in the fall. So one of the things that people really struggle with is selling flowers in the summer. And I've said this in prior videos, but if it weren't for lisianthus, I probably would not be growing for the summer. But if you have lisianthus coming in like me, I think that you do have a prime opportunity to leverage that crop and really make an event or show out of it. And so this is what this video is going to be about, because I'm going to show you my flower subscription bouquets, how the marketing around that really gets elevated with lisianthus, and then we're going to talk about having a pop-up bouquet bar to really help move a bolus or an abundance of stems that are coming in. And just patting myself on the back, this is a bit of luck as well as experience having grown lisianthus before. I anticipated the bulk of them to come in sometime later this week, and I got it. It was facilitated by a couple of days in the high 90s. In fact, it's like 95 degrees outside right now. And so the lisianthus is completely popping. And that's great because I have a lot of interest in this bouquet bar. We're going to talk about marketing later. And at a certain point, I was a little bit concerned about whether or not I would have enough stems. But right now it is Wednesday, and I am going to harvest the lisianthus that are ready. I'm going to try to harvest as much as possible. I have been harvesting over the last few days, but this is also a big milestone week for us in the sense that E is getting her first set of post-treatment scans tomorrow. So in case if you can't hear in my voice, I am very congested. E picked something up late last week at daycare and had symptoms of just a runny nose and a cough. I was concerned because at her age, she needs to get put under general anesthesia for her scans. And if she's too congested, there obviously is a risk that it might compromise her airways. So sometimes a more conservative anesthesiologist won't want to put her under for good reason, especially if it's just for routine scans that can be rescheduled. But whatever she had, she gave it to me and Eric. Completely took Eric out yesterday with a fever. And today is like my first day of this like onslaught of symptoms. I really don't feel great, but I'm really hoping that I can get enough rest tonight, going into early morning scans tomorrow, and be my best self for Friday. And of course, wear a mask so that I don't spread anything. But long story short, I want to make sure that I get as much done today because I don't know how much time we're going to have tomorrow. It is going to be a full day in New York City. All right, so let me show you quickly what I have. This is my main row of lisianthus. I have another video that's going to be talking about all the varieties that I've grown, but you can see I've really focused on the colors of like lavender. This is lavender ice over here, the color, and pinks to grow. And then I have a secondary row over here. If I come all the way to this row, you can see that I've got some more like champagne peachy colors. This is elegance over here. And then this is, I believe, Rosita, which is also another pink. And I find that I personally really like the pink types of lisianthus. I think it makes for a more romantic type of palette, but basically the bouquets are going to have this type of color vibe. Now, one of the things that I got a little bit worried about with the bouquet bar is just how many other types of flowers am I going to have? And honestly, if you look around, I don't have a ton that is currently blooming. So I do have a bunch of celosia, and I haven't finished picking all of the celosia, but I have a bucket that's already inside. This is all self-seeded Selway celosia, and I swear I rip up so much of this stuff and I can't seem to get rid of it. So there is always a ton of it, and of course it always comes into handy for things like a bouquet bar. There's even more over here. But you can see I've got, this is kale, ornamental kale for the fall, so definitely not ready yet. All the yarrow, I would say like 98% of it is completely gone, and I really should be cutting it down a bit more. But you can see there's still some stems of yarrow that are okay, not enough for it to be a prolific presence in my bouquets. I do have some dill that I'll be able to harvest, and we have some sunflowers that are ready in the cooler. These are just all sunflowers that are blooming because they're side shoots. And we've got some monster stems like this that have been self-reseeded that I think I might be able to get a couple of usable side shoot stems from if they cooperate over the next few days. But if they don't, it's okay because I do have some in the cooler. I also have some weeds that I think are going to be really cool for textural interest, like this grass over here. I was almost going to pull them out, but I was like, let me save these for the bouquet bar because I think they're going to have a good presence. And last but not least, the mountain mint, I think, is basically in its last week where I think I can still use them for as filler. And I have some agastache out in the landscaping all the way over there. Also, if I want to bulk up these bouquets. I wanted to show you what's currently blooming because the takeaway is I actually don't have that much stuff. I'll do a farm tour maybe next week or the week after. You can see there's just like a bunch of seedlings in the ground, and they're going to take at least, I would say, 45 days to get to maturity. And so I have this situation where I have a lot of a premium focal, which is lisianthus, and not a ton of other stuff. And that definitely really influences how I am structuring my bouquets for the flower subscription pickup, as well as for the bouquet bar. Now, this is a topic that I've been thinking heavily about because this year I'm really forcing myself to look at the cost of growing something, the time related to growing something, the time related to making bouquets, and making more educated business decisions on how I structure what I grow, how I structure what goes into a bouquet based off of that type of data. And one thing I can tell you is that the amount of time it takes for me to make a bouquet is still not there where it makes sense for me to prioritize a mixed bouquet over something like a straight bunch of lisianthus. Now, my lisianthus plugs this year were a little bit more expensive. They were driven by two things. One, I bought them in 125 cell trays. But two, I bought them from Farmer Bailey's, and for those of you who buy wholesale from him, you'll recognize that a few months ago he had changed his website platform. Actually, I don't even think he changed. I think Shopify just mandated that basically anyone who goes through the shop, you have to remit sales tax. So of course, since we're buying this wholesale, we're growing it to sell to the end consumer, we should not get taxed on it. But Farmer Bailey's needed some information around it, and I give myself a personal pass on this. I did not give the information to him on time. Honestly, that was a crazy time when we were still dealing with ease treatments. So it wasn't until I looked back at my numbers, crunching the numbers, when I realized, why did I pay tax on this? So my plugs went up a little bit because of tax. Tax is around 7% here in New Jersey, so it wasn't the main contributor to that. But the takeaway is that I spent a lot of money on the plugs themselves to grow them. Also, with the time, the effort to weed, it gets me to a final sales, or it gets me to a final cost price of $1.30 per stem. So it means that I have to value the stem at least twice that amount for it to make sense for me to sell at all. And so now you balance, hey, like if I were to sell each stem at $2.60 in a bouquet, in the worst case scenario, but it saves time on how much time I'll be spending on making bouquets, is it worth it? And when I do the math, it is absolutely worth it. So therefore, we are going to be doing straight bunches for my CSA customers. A bit of a pro tip. Costco is now carrying these 5-gallon buckets. Here in the United States, we've got two major hardware stores, Home Depot and Lowe's. And these buckets have really skyrocketed in price. They're usually like, I want to say $6 to $7 now, but Costco has these for $3. And I really do like harvesting into taller buckets because it obviously gives it more support. It is so hot outside that my camera overheated, but I harvested this bucket. I'm averaging about, call it just under 15 seconds a stem to harvest the lisianthus. And part of it, or a lot of it, is due to the fact that it's in netting. Even my pruners get stuck in the netting. This is the self-seeded celosia that I've harvested alongside with some self-seeded cosmos that I'm using for the Bouquet bar. Really, the only thing here that's not self-seeded is this status, which I only have a few stems of anyway. Here's some additional lisianthus bouquet or lisianthus stems that I harvested earlier, as well as some cosmos. And so my goal right now is to crank out the CSA flower subscription bouquets. And based off of some of the stems that I've harvested, like, let me show you one of these. I feel like that it is very reasonable for me to do 7 to 8 stems in a bouquet. So look at that. Like, this is Champagne Elegance, and 3 are currently bloomed. There's probably another 2 or 3 heads that I'm pretty confident will open up. So that is a very beefy stem. And if I put at least 3 or 4 of those beefy stems together, then it obviously makes for a much more full bouquet. So we're gonna get going on that right now. I have my rubber bands, my snips, my flowers over here, and a couple of pre-made sleeves. I'm hoping to be able to use these sometime this season. Maybe this is it. These are really great for straight bunches. I have a video on my Patreon talking about paper as it related to tulips. So these were not suitable for tulips because they were a little bit too long. Hoping they'll be suitable for that. So let's create what looks like a $25 bouquet from a perceived value perspective. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ooh la la. All right, we're gonna do one more, and that's an 8. So this is an 8 stem with a bunch of more premium ones that have a lot of sprays, and then I've put a couple that are what I call less premium because they only have like 2 buds. Now, this is 8 stems at $25. So if you do the math, it's a little over $3 a stem. And this is very, very close to what I would sell wholesale to a wholesale customer who is buying for like a wedding, except we're typically pricing those at anywhere from like $2.25 to maybe like $3.25 if you have a really crazy stem. But this is just slightly above premium wholesale prices, so I feel pretty good about it. Now the final question is, will it look good in the sleeve? Oh no, I think the sleeve's gonna make it a little bit more. I actually changed my mind. I'm still gonna wrap them. My concern was less around the perceived value because I think it looked fine. It was more about smushing the flowers. So this just feels better. All right, let's continue building some more. Oh my God, these stems are so beefy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, I'm gonna take this one out. So my CSA members get the best stems, and it's not to say that the others are not good, but I'm gonna save them for the Bouquet bar. I'm actually, you know what I'm gonna do? You can see how disheveled I am right now, but I am going to try to lay these out into more of like a assembly line, so that way I'm not spending a lot of time trying to maneuver around here and getting the stems out. And luckily from a harvesting perspective, I do have a bit more, or they are a little bit more organized by that, so I can make sure that everyone's getting a blend of all the flowers that I have. I have basically all of them except for maybe one bouquet that hasn't been made. So these are the CSA flower subscription bouquets. I'd be really happy with this if this was my $25 bouquet. And it took literally a fraction of the time to make. So I am basically done, which is really, really nice. Typically, I feel like this would take me twice as amount of time to make. And of course, I'm not as fast as I should be. And here's all the lisianthus left. I am really glad that I did this because look outside right now. It is pouring. So I'm glad I was able to harvest those lisianthus before the rain got to them. Good morning, everyone. It is the day of flower subscription pickup and bouquet bar. As I anticipated yesterday, we would not have any time to do any flower related stuff. But what I didn't anticipate was that it was going to take about 3 hours to get home from New York City. Actually, it took about 3.5 hours. The state of New Jersey was under a flash flood warning yesterday. So in the summer here, it's really common for us to get these like short bursts of thunderstorms. And basically those thunderstorms create a lot of rain in a short period of time. But luckily, the rain didn't do that much damage here. I don't think there really was that much flooding, but it did make getting out of the city or the tunnel a lot more difficult. So it took us a while to get home. I'm gonna do an update later, but I'm not going to make you guys all wait for that piece. If you want to hear a little bit more, E-scans did come back clear. So that was a big sigh of relief, and I'll add a little bit more around some of the other stuff that's been happening with the results that came back. So stay tuned for the end of the video for that. But what that means is that I harvested a bit, but I need to harvest a bit more. You can see that there is some more lisianthus over here that can be harvested. I need to harvest other fillers like the mint, more cosmos if possible, and really just get the show on the road in terms of putting everything together. It has been a wild morning. So I was out here around like 6:40 harvesting, and next thing I know, it's already like 8 a.m. So Eric has been down for the count again. He has had another fever from whatever E brought home from daycare. So part of the challenge was there's a bit of single parenting last night and trying to make sure that he's also okay. So got E ready for daycare, worked a little bit, and then now I'm trying to get the car ready. So it's about like 10:40-ish. And luckily my work is flexible enough where I have a bunch of emails waiting for me from yesterday. I've answered all the urgent ones, and I can do that later today, if not over the weekend. And most of my team is out anyway, just for summer vacation this week. So, but this is what I have. I need to harvest a little bit more, but let me flip the camera around and show you. So these are both flower subscription bouquets. We've got a couple of people actually picking up at the store because it's closer to them, where the bouquet bar is, that is. I'm going to harvest a few more lisianthus, but you can see there's a bunch of lisianthus. I'm going to try to harvest a little bit more cosmos. We've got some sunflowers, not as much as I'd like. Got a lot of this Selway celosia. Again, this is the self-seeded stuff, which is looking pretty good. I have some oregano coming in, which is really exciting because it's finally ready to use. Unfortunately, a lot of it got flattened, but I do think that this will make for a really good filler. And then I'm basically going to harvest a lot of other filler right now, in addition to some lisianthus. And then, of course, we've got some mountain mint. There was a patch that I was harvesting from where I was like, why are there so many ants? And I realized that there were ants literally sleeping underneath the bottom of this. So that was frustrating. But I have many patches of mountain mint, so we're going to get some more. And then I'm going to build a couple of sample bouquets to make sure that the bouquets look good for the bouquet bar. Right, so I think I am finally done harvesting everything for the bouquet bar, as well as the flower subscription. So about 45 minutes before I have to leave, I'm going to set up the flower subscription area, which is basically just our K-truck with a sign and a couple buckets of flowers. And then let me show you what I'm bringing to the bouquet bar and talk a little bit about like the pricing piece of it, as well as the profitability piece and how the certain types of flowers I have play into that. All right, so I've divided the flowers up based off of price and like premiumness. So you guys have heard me talk at length about the lisianthus. This is by far the most expensive flower we are bringing to the Bouquet bar. Now I am forecasting that I'll sell about 30 bouquets. That's based off of about 94 people saying that they were interested on Facebook. And I think anywhere from like 20 to 30% of people will show up. So assuming that about 30% show up, we'll call it 30 people, 30 bouquets, and hopefully I have enough. So anyway, from a lisianthus perspective, everyone's going to be able to get 3 from within here. And this is like a higher grade type of stem, with each stem having multiple buds, like the type that you would sell to florists. Then they're also going to be able to choose 1 from here, which is a lower grade type of stem. And it could just be because like this one looks a little bit more single, less buds, a little bit shorter, that kind of stuff. So they're going to get a total of 4 lisianthus. Then they're going to be able to choose a total of 1 to 2, depending on what flower it is. Like, for example, if they choose status, they get 2 status. They'll be able to choose 1 from here, and I've counted. There's like something like 50 stems in here, so there's plenty to go around. They'll get to choose 1 sunflower. I have about like 20-something sunflowers, so I might run out. If I do, then they could choose 1 more lisianthus. They get to choose 1 cosmo. And by the way, these were definitely grown by me deliberately, meaning that they were seeded. Of course, the sunflowers were seeded, but I call these like low effort annuals because if you grow cosmos really well, like I would say the majority of these stems came from basically 3 plants. So you can see how prolific cosmos can be as a filler. The dill I grew, you know, there's some stuff here that's perennialized, like the, oh my God, this is called, I can't believe it's not echinops, it's thistles, thistle. So this over here, I don't have a ton of anymore, but obviously the yarrow's been perennialized. So there's a little bit of effort here, but not much. This is a weed that grows where we are. It's called nutsedge, and it provides that little sparkle twinkle that Aaron Benzakein would like to say. And I want to encourage people that, like, especially those at the Bouquet bar, to accept the fact that we should think about how we can use natives in our arrangements, and that there's nothing wrong with a really good looking weed, because what is a weed after all but a plant that we don't desire? And then we get into the lowest effort piece over here, which are self-seeded celosia in year 4. This is Selway celosia. And I just, like, I clearly have an abundance of it. So each person will be able to get 3. There's some mountain mint in here, which each person will be able to get 2. This is perennialized. And then this is lamb's quarter, which is also another weed that grows around here, but kind of has like a eucalyptus type of feel. So we're talking about 2 stems of mountain mint, plus 1 is 3, plus 3 is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, plus 4 is 14 stems total for $25. And obviously the Bouquet bar itself is also an experience. So they're going to be able to hopefully feel like they get their value out of this. Now, I've talked before about one of the main reasons why I have a Bouquet bar is to convert people to a flower subscription. So I am going to be altering my flower subscription to match the dates where they could pick up in a few more weeks. And what I do is I allow them to apply the price of today's bouquet to that. So for the next 45 minutes, I need to get printing on those things that I put on the sleeves. And then we're going to pack this up and get going. This is like literally down to the wire. The last Bouquet bar I did was like super well thought out. The night before I was like sitting there with a whiteboard with Eric. How do I make this a good experience? Didn't have the time to do that this time around. I think it's going to be totally fine. I'm going to put signs around like how many people can take of each, but because the store is relatively small, it is hard for a bunch of people to do it anyway, like to be around at the same time. So typically people are shopping around the store for secondhand clothing and shoes, while I'm able to basically work with like 2 to 3 people at a given time. And that makes it a lot more easy for me to also verbally direct them as to what to do. Now, the difference between this Bouquet bar and the on-farm Bouquet bar I had a few weeks ago is that I do have to take payment. So the square and everything is ready to go. I've gone back and forth on selling tickets, and the more I think about it, the more I'm like, why didn't I not sell tickets? And I'll get a little bit more to the reasoning behind that, as well as the marketing for this event. So if I did my job right, we should have at least like a dozen and a half people show up. Like, I have no idea. So it could very well be that I've harvested all of these flowers and they don't really go anywhere, but I will always be able to reuse them and drop mixed bouquets off at the country store this weekend for the stems that aren't used. All right, we are now on our way to the Bouquet bar, which according to my GPS is about 18 minutes away with a little bit of traffic, which means we will get there at 12:40, 20 minutes before it starts, giving me about 20 minutes to set up. Setup isn't going to be super complex. You guys will see it's just a table with a tablecloth and some buckets. And one of the things that I was doing in my scramble to get out was visualize the whole process to make sure that I would have what I have. So I have a crate bulb where I have my snips, I have rubber bands. I'm going to use pre-made sleeves for this just because I'm not going to have the ability, I feel, to take paper wrap and staple it all together. So the pre-made sleeves are going to work. And I think that even though the pre-made sleeves kind of smush the flowers a little bit and reduce the perceived value, because people are making their own bouquets, I feel that's less of an issue this time around. So I did that, and as I'm thinking about how I set up the bouquet bar, I do think that it's very likely I'm going to take the lisianthus out of the buckets. They are a pretty robust flower where they can be out for a good period of time, even if it's 2 hours. So I'm not going to take all the lisianthus out. I'm going to do it in phases, but what this allows is basically easier access to the flowers without them tangling up, without people potentially breaking off certain bloom heads. And I feel like it's going to be like a more seamless experience as they go around. So I still have a little bit of setup that I need to do in terms of labeling how many people can take, but we are almost there, and the bouquet bar is going to be over in a couple of hours. We are back from the Bouquet bar, and I'm checking on the CSA subscription pickups. So mostly everyone has picked up except for 2 people. And I always like to keep an extra bouquet out just so that they feel like they have choice. We had a customer come to the Bouquet bar that picked up because it was closer to her house. She bought an extra bouquet for her daughter there. And then I also dropped off a bouquet for a customer who literally lived like half a mile away because she's a nurse. And so I have some customers who have been around for a really long time, and I will go out of my way to do things like that, especially if it's along the route. It's really just an extra like 5 minutes for me to go drop that off. She's happy. I'm happy that she gets the flowers. And I'm gonna be making some bouquets for the country store and debriefing how it went. But let me just show you, these are the flowers that we have left, which really isn't that many. All right, so I just offloaded everything from the car, and because I have everything out, I'm just gonna be talking and making bouquets for the country store with you guys using the leftover flowers that I have. In fact, I had like 5 minutes left over. And here's one bouquet bunch that I made for the country store already. So I want to do a bit of a debrief, but we sold a total of $400 worth today, which comes out to 16 bouquets. Now, if you guys remember, I was basically forecasting for around like, I'll call it 30 bouquets. And when I look at the flowers that I have left, I think in reality, I could have comfortably got up to like 23, 24 bouquets. And then the last few probably would have felt a little bit more dicey with at least the perceived value of those bouquets. But overall, it went pretty well. This was one of those sessions where, believe it or not, it didn't feel like it was like absolutely crazy and I was inundated. I'm going to talk about some things that went really well, some things that I think I can improve upon, as well as some observations. So things that went really well was this time I did not have a, what do you call it? Like I didn't put labels on the buckets in terms of what people should take. Instead, I made it an effort to walk people through the whole process. And that was consistent feedback given to me that they really loved that approach. They really loved not feeling like they were on their own and just putting flowers together, because sometimes you get a little bit overwhelmed. Instead, I would explain to them that, like, this is oregano, this is lisianthus. I started, or I normally don't start it from seed, but if I were to, it would be in January, talk about how they are princesses, tell them about how, like, this is culinary dill. So they really loved the little, like, walkthrough of what everything was. And that was, like, said multiple times that was what stood out with this bouquet bar versus some of the others. They also really loved the fact that I helped edit the bouquet at the end. You find that beginners typically, like myself when I first started, you don't know any better, and people end up hiding, like, the star of the bouquet, especially amongst the filler. So helped with that, and they felt like that they got a pretty good bouquet afterwards at the end when I finished. Some other things that were interesting was what people tended to and did not tend to. So the amaranth is something that always just will surprise me no matter what, because I am not the biggest fan of amaranth, but that always consistently at the last few bouquet bars always does well. So I have some amaranth that's literally popping up in the compost, and I think I am going to transplant those babies because they will be perfect for the fall. So that's some of the observations. People were pretty tickled to hear about the dill. They thought it was pretty cool to see what flowering dill looked like, but very few of them actually chose it for their bouquets. I would say that the yarrow is pretty popular, as well as, what else is popular? The yarrow and probably the, what was the other one? It was the thistle was pretty popular. So overall, I think that the value that people got from this was the fact that they got to make their own bouquet, and they felt like that, there was a bit of structure around it. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking the leftover pieces that people didn't want, and of course it makes it a lot easier for me to make a bouquet from it. Some of the mint that I harvested, believe it or not, started like wilting a little bit. I don't know what happened there, but this is going to be for the country store, and I have a ton of cosmos, which is a little bit of a surprise. So let's actually talk a little bit about marketing and turnout. So it's kind of hard to forecast how many people are going to show up to these events. And I feel like consistently now, it's really like 15% of people who say they're going to attend on the Facebook event. And so we had about 94 people. And this time what I did differently was I did try to promote within the discussions tab just the flowers that we were going to have. And people definitely showed up for lisianthus. The other thing was I put some paid dollars behind it. I had a $35 budget, and I ended up stopping it at $16, because at that point I had like 80 people who said they were interested, and I got a little bit nervous. I was like, am I going to have enough flowers? So obviously I probably could have continued that a little bit more, but it's totally fine because we had a really good experience. And this time around, it felt like there was enough traffic really for the entire time. And I wasn't like sitting and just, like thumb twiddling around, even though I did have a chance to build one bouquet. We had a late straggler, and it was kind of funny because I ended up basically making a bouquet with her, or two bouquets with her, in the parking lot. So she came a little bit late, but she was still able to catch me, and we made bouquets, which was really, really nice. But overall, I would say that the turnout was good, especially for a 2-hour period. And it's definitely something that we're going to talk about doing again in the fall. So I said I put some paid dollars behind it. I now have enough people following me on Facebook where Facebook can get smart and use their algorithm to create these like lookalike audiences. And this is why it is really important for you to protect your Facebook, so that people who are going to be your customers follow you, and not like friends and family who just want to support you but really aren't like your true customer type, or other fellow flower farmers, because that confuses the algorithm, and it doesn't really give the algorithm an ability to figure out who else it should be serving up your information to in order to help promote something. So I felt like my money went further than it normally did, because now I have close to 1,000 people following me. And I do feel like the majority of them are people who are locals and not necessarily flower farmers. So if you're watching this video, please refrain from following me on Facebook. I get the temptation. You can follow me on Instagram because I kind of treat that more as both for flower farmers and for my customers. But having that Facebook algorithm work for me definitely is super, super helpful. So takeaways are the promotion worked because we had people walk in who had never been to the store before. The store owner was also really thankful that I had done that. I always do that because one of the goals is to make sure that she's also getting some traffic to her store, especially at a time where it's a little bit slow. Remember, the summer slump doesn't just impact us, it also impacts retailers too. So she had like a ton of new customers come in today, which is pretty exciting. And then we also had a bunch of people who were really interested in my flower subscription. Again, a lot of this is to feed the flower subscription that I have. So off of every sleeve, I put this photo over here with the QR code telling people that they could sign up for my flower subscription. And the carrot is you can put the cost of today's bouquet towards that flower subscription. So basically today's bouquet would be free. And so the flower subscription normally is 5 weeks, but because of how much time is left in the season, I only have 4 weeks. But that's still good for me because that means I could potentially make $75 off of a customer instead of $25. And long term, you know, I have a better chance of retaining them and having them join like next year's CSA subscription versus just having them be this like one-time customer, right? So this really is all about how do I maximize the lifetime value out of a specific customer and get them to come back again, especially when they've just come off of a high of a bouquet bar and really want more. So how do you make sure it's easy for them to be able to access more? That should be the goal. So, all right, let's see. We're just gonna put some more lisianthus over here. And the lisianthus I have left are actually like what I would call the lower grade type of lisianthus. So I don't feel bad about stuffing them a little bit more. But these are definitely some pretty good mixed bouquets that I'm really glad to be able to offer. And at this point, the plugs, the labor for all the lisianthus have been more than paid back since I had a CSA subscription pickup today, which was 100% lisianthus. We had a few weeks ago a flower subscription pickup that was also featuring lisianthus as a focal, though not all straight bunch of lisianthus. And then, of course, I get to sell at the country store with these lisianthus. So overall, it is a profitable crop, and I will be doing the specific numbers as a Patreon post. So if you're a member, 2 posts coming up this weekend, one talking about the profitability of a straight lisianthus bunch through the flower subscription, and the other one talking about what the profit looked like for the bouquet bar bouquets. So I think that this exercise is really important for us to figure out just, can we overstuff a little bit? Are there certain times of the season where it makes sense to overstuff versus others? And by the way, people love the cosmos, which is kind of funny because sometimes us flower farmers, we look at cosmos, we're like, terrible vase life, and we don't really think much of them. But for people who need something to help bulk up a bouquet, as well as people who've grown cosmos really well, I think that you'll agree with me that these are a staple. And when given the option or just the opportunity cost of figuring out whether or not I should be direct seeding something like Cosmo or Zinnia, I hands down will always prioritize a Cosmo over Zinnias because of how much they can bulk up a bouquet. And this is not to say that Zinnias are bad because they obviously have a place, but I do think that with some of the other focals that I have, the Zinnias definitely take more of a back seat compared to what a Cosmo can do for my bouquets. All right, so just rounding this one out. Let's put some more, let's put another sunflower in here. So you can tell that I actually came back with some sunflowers, which is nice because those always work well in a retail bouquet. Here are the final results of the bouquets that I'm going to be dropping off at the country store. And by the way, when I tease these up the day before, the sales go a lot better. So, to round out this video all about overcoming the summer slump, can you do something like this every single week? Probably, but obviously a bouquet bar has a hype because it's like a once in a while type of thing. But I think that this type of approach is really great for people who are not always succession planting flowers to have on a very consistent basis, but might just have an abundance of flowers coming in at once. They still want to get a little bit of cash flow over the summer. So today, between the bouquet bar and the CSA pickup, we're talking about like a $725 day. And that doesn't even include the country store stuff that's going to happen over the weekend. I have a feeling that these will sell out pretty well because of the fact that they do have this lisianthus. And of course, there's a lot of future potential that comes from this, but I just really want to emphasize that pop-ups can be used strategically, especially if you need cash flow. So I have a lot of cash. I told Eric that basically a bouquet bar supplies our year's worth of eggs needs because we pay our neighbor in cash. But they also are a great way for you to move flowers, get the word out about yourself, and meeting new people. I can't tell you how many great conversations I had today. So I definitely encourage you to do a bouquet bar if you haven't yet. And here is a really helpful video on hosting a bouquet bar if you want to do a little bit more than what I just did today, verbally talking people through. If you want something that's a little bit more of like a self-guided event, that is a great video showing you how I did that. Oh, and how could I forget? Here's a quick update on E.
It's an ambulance.
It's an ambulance?
Yeah.